Castaway Together by Dean Whitaker. The roar of the waves was deafening as Olivia Matthews clung to a piece of driftwood, her blue eyes wide with fear. The luxury cruise ship that was supposed to be her relaxing vacation now lay somewhere beneath the churning waters of the South Pacific. As another wave crashed over her, Olivia's grip slipped, and she felt herself being pulled under. Panic gripped her as she struggled against the current. Just as her lungs began to burn, a strong arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her to the surface. Olivia gasped for air, blinking salt water from her eyes to see Jack Holloway, the ship's ruggedly handsome activities director, holding on to her. "Don't give up now," Jack shouted over the storm, his voice barely audible above the howling wind. "Look, there's land ahead." Olivia squinted through the rain and saw the faint outline of an island in the distance. With renewed determination, she kicked her legs, swimming alongside Jack as they fought against the relentless current. The journey to shore seemed endless. Every time Olivia thought she couldn't go on, Jack's encouraging words kept her moving. "You're doing great," he'd call out, his own exhaustion evident in his voice. "Just a little further." After what felt like hours, Olivia's feet finally touched sand. She stumbled onto the beach, collapsing onto her hands and knees, coughing up seawater. Jack knelt beside her, his hand on her back, offering silent support. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice hoarse from exertion. Olivia nodded weakly, still catching her breath. "I think so. Thanks to you." As the adrenaline wore off, the reality of their situation began to sink in. They were alive, but stranded on an unknown island with nothing but the clothes on their backs. The gravity of their predicament hit Olivia like a physical blow, and she felt tears welling up in her eyes. Jack seemed to sense her distress. He gently squeezed her shoulder, his touch grounding her. "Hey, we made it," he said softly. "That's what matters right now. We're going to be okay." Olivia took a deep breath, drawing strength from his words. She looked up at Jack, really seeing him for the first time since their ordeal began. His usually perfectly styled hair was plastered to his forehead, and his white uniform shirt was torn and stained. Yet his eyes held a determined glint that bolstered her spirits. Jack stood, surveying their surroundings. The beach gave way to a lush tropical forest, and in the distance, a mountain peak rose above the tree line. "We should find fresh water and shelter," he said, slipping easily into a leadership role. "Can you walk?" Olivia got to her feet, wincing at her sore muscles. "I'll manage," she replied, trying to sound braver than she felt. As they made their way into the forest, Olivia studied Jack. She'd admired him from afar during the cruise, charmed by his easy smile and the way he effortlessly entertained the passengers. Now, she saw a different side of him, focused, capable, and reassuring in the face of disaster. Jack, for his part, was impressed by Olivia's resilience. He'd noticed her on the ship, of course her quiet grace and kind smile had caught his attention more than once. But now, watching her push through her exhaustion and fear, he felt a growing admiration for her strength. They found a freshwater stream and drank gratefully before following it upstream. As the sun began to set, they came across a rocky overhang that would provide some shelter for the night. "It's not the Ritz," Jack said with a wry smile, "but it'll do for now." Olivia managed a small laugh, the sound surprising her. "I've never been so happy to see a rock in my life." They gathered large leaves to create makeshift beds and collected fruit from nearby trees. As they sat eating their meager dinner, the enormity of their situation settled over them like a heavy blanket. "Do you think anyone's looking for us?" Olivia asked softly, voicing the fear that had been nagging at her since they reached shore. Jack nodded, his expression serious but not without hope. "The ship would have sent out a distress signal before it went down. Search and rescue teams will be combing the area. We just need to hang on and find a way to signal them when they get close." Olivia hugged her knees to her chest, suddenly feeling very small in the vastness of their unfamiliar surroundings. "I'm glad I'm not alone," she admitted. "I don't think I could do this by myself." Jack reached out and squeezed her hand, the gesture comforting in its simplicity. "We're in this together," he said firmly. "We'll get through it." As darkness fell, the sounds of the forest grew louder. Strange bird calls and the rustle of unseen animals made Olivia jump more than once. Jack noticed her unease and began to talk, his voice low and soothing. "You know, I used to go camping a lot as a kid," he said. "My dad would take us to these remote spots, miles from civilization. I hated it at first. Too many bugs, no TV, and don't even get me started on the lack of indoor plumbing." Olivia chuckled softly, grateful for the distraction. "What changed your mind?" Jack's eyes took on a faraway look. "One night, we were sitting around the campfire, and my dad pointed out the stars. I'd never seen so many in my life. He taught me about constellations, how sailors used to navigate by them. It was the first time I realized how vast and amazing the world is beyond our everyday lives." As Jack spoke, Olivia found herself relaxing. She looked up, gasping softly at the blanket of stars visible through the canopy of leaves. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Yeah, it is," Jack agreed, but when Olivia glanced over, she found him looking at her instead of the sky. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the fear and uncertainty of their situation faded into the background. The moment was broken by a loud screech from somewhere in the forest. Olivia startled, instinctively moving closer to Jack. "Probably just a bird," Jack said, but he put his arm around her shoulders, offering silent comfort. "Try to get some sleep. Tomorrow we'll start figuring out how to get home." As Olivia drifted off, lulled by exhaustion and the steady sound of Jack's breathing, her last coherent thought was that maybe, just maybe, they would be okay. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Jack and Olivia worked tirelessly to improve their situation, driven by the need to survive and the hope of rescue. They expanded their shelter, weaving palm fronds into a roof to protect them from the frequent rain showers. Jack taught Olivia how to make simple traps for small animals, supplementing their diet of fruit and coconuts. They took turns venturing into the shallows with makeshift spears, learning through trial and error how to catch fish. Each task was a challenge, but they faced them together, their teamwork growing stronger with each passing day. They celebrated small victories, a successful fishing trip, finding a grove of banana trees, creating a fire using Jack's watch face and some dry tinder. Throughout it all, they talked. Long days of work were punctuated by conversations that ranged from lighthearted to deeply personal. Olivia learned that Jack had joined the cruise line after leaving a high-stress job in finance, seeking adventure and a chance to reassess his life's direction. "I was making great money," Jack confessed one evening as they sat by their fire, "but I was miserable. I'd look at myself in the mirror and wonder who I'd become. The day I quit, it felt like I could breathe again for the first time in years." Olivia nodded, understanding all too well the pressure to follow a conventional path. "That's brave, though," she said. "A lot of people never take that leap." Jack shrugged, poking at the fire with a stick. "What about you? Did you always want to be an illustrator?" Olivia smiled, thinking of her studio back home. "I've been drawing for as long as I can remember. My parents, well, they wanted me to pursue something more practical. But art was the only thing that ever made sense to me." As she spoke about her work, her eyes lit up with passion. She told Jack about the children's books she'd illustrated, the joy of bringing stories to life through her art. "I've always had this secret dream," she admitted, "of writing my own stories someday." Jack listened intently, charmed by her enthusiasm. "Why haven't you?" he asked. Olivia's smile faltered. "Oh, fear of failure, I suppose. It's safer to illustrate other people's words." "Hey," Jack said softly, reaching out to touch her arm. "If there's anything this experience has taught me, it's that we're capable of so much more than we think. When we get out of here, you should give it a shot." Olivia felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the fire. "Maybe I will," she said, and for the first time, she truly believed it. As the days turned into weeks, Jack and Olivia fell into a routine. They woke at dawn, gathering food and fresh water for the day. They worked on projects to improve their shelter and explored the island, always on the lookout for anything that might aid in their rescue. One afternoon, about 3 weeks into their ordeal, they decided to climb the mountain they'd spotted on their first day. The trek was challenging, but as they reached the summit, the view took their breath away. "Oh, Jack," Olivia gasped, taking in the panorama of lush green forest and pristine beaches. "It's like paradise." Jack nodded, equally awestruck. "Almost makes you forget we're castaways," he joked, but there was a note of wistfulness in his voice. As they stood there, taking in the beauty of their temporary home, Olivia felt a shift in the air between them. She turned to find Jack watching her, an unreadable expression on his face. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. Jack shook his head, a small smile playing at his lips. "Nothing, I just, if I had to be stranded on a desert island with someone, I'm glad it's you." Olivia's heart fluttered. "Really?" Jack nodded, suddenly looking shy. "You're strong, smart, and you haven't complained once, even when things got tough. Plus," he added with a grin, "you laugh at my terrible jokes." Olivia's cheeks flushed, and not just from the climb. "Your jokes aren't that bad," she teased, "and I'm glad it's you too. I don't think I would have survived without you, Jack." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world seemed to stand still. Jack leaned in slowly, giving Olivia plenty of time to pull away if she wanted. Instead, she closed the distance between them, their lips meeting in a soft, sweet kiss. When they parted, both were smiling. "Well," Jack said, a bit breathlessly, "that's one way to pass the time on a desert island." Olivia laughed, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. As they made their way back down the mountain, hand in hand, she marveled at how something beautiful had grown out of such dire circumstances. Their newfound closeness gave them strength as the days turned to weeks. They faced challenges together, tropical storms that threatened to destroy their shelter, close encounters with wildlife, and moments of despair when rescue seemed impossible. One particularly difficult day, after a storm had washed away much of their progress, Olivia found herself overwhelmed by hopelessness. She sat on the beach, tears streaming down her face as she stared out at the endless expanse of ocean. Jack found her there, silently sitting beside her and wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "I want to talk about it?" he asked gently. Olivia leaned into him, drawing comfort from his presence. "What if they never find us, Jack? What if we're stuck here forever?" Jack was quiet for a moment, considering his words carefully. "I can't promise that won't happen," he said finally, "but I can promise that no matter what, we'll face it together. And hey," he added, nudging her playfully, "there are worse people to be stuck with for eternity." Despite herself, Olivia chuckled. She turned to Jack, struck once again by the warmth in his eyes. "How do you always know the right thing to say?" Jack shrugged, a lopsided grin on his face. "Must be all those team-building exercises I led on the ship, finally paying off." Olivia shook her head, marveling at his ability to find humor even in their darkest moments. She leaned in, kissing him softly. "Thank you," she murmured against his lips. "For what?" Jack asked, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "For being you," Olivia replied simply. As the weeks turned into months, Jack and Olivia's bond deepened. They learned each other's strengths and weaknesses, supporting one another through the ups and downs of their island life. They shared stories of their pasts, their hopes for the future, and their fears about what awaited them when they were rescued. One evening, as they sat on the beach watching the sunset, Jack turned to Olivia with a serious expression. "Can I ask you something?" Olivia nodded, curious about his sudden solemnity. "When we get back, what happens to us?" Jack asked, his voice hesitant. Olivia felt her heart skip a beat. It was a question she'd been avoiding, afraid of the answer. "What do you want to happen?" she asked carefully. Jack took her hand, entwining their fingers. "I know our situation is unusual, to say the least, but Olivia, these past months I've never felt closer to anyone in my life. The thought of going back and just saying goodbye, I can't imagine it." Olivia felt tears in her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. "I can't imagine it either," she admitted. "Jack, I think I'm falling in love with you." Jack's face broke into a radiant smile. "I think I'm falling in love with you too," he said, pulling her close. As they kissed, the setting sun painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Olivia felt a sense of peace wash over her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The next morning, Olivia woke early, inspired by their conversation the night before. She found a smooth piece of bark and, using charcoal from their fire, began to sketch. When Jack awoke, he found her absorbed in her work. "What's this?" he asked, peering over her shoulder. Olivia blushed, suddenly shy. "I had an idea for a children's book, about two castaways who find love on a desert island." Jack's eyes lit up. "Olivia, that's fantastic. Can I see?" As Olivia showed him her rough sketches and explained her ideas for the story, Jack listened with rapt attention. "This is really good," he said earnestly. "You should definitely pursue this when we get back." Olivia beamed at his encouragement. "Maybe we could work on it together," she suggested. "You could help with the story." Jack's answering smile was all the confirmation she needed. Over the next few weeks, they spent their evenings working on the book. Jack would suggest plot points or dialogue, while Olivia sketched characters and scenes. It became a way for them to process their experiences, turning their hardships into something positive. As they worked, they also continued their daily routines of survival and keeping watch for potential rescue. They had created a large SOS sign on the beach using rocks and fallen tree branches, and they maintained a signal fire, ready to be lit at a moment's notice. One morning, about 4 months after the shipwreck, Jack and Olivia stood on the beach, scanning the horizon as they did each day. Suddenly, Olivia grabbed Jack's arm. "Look," she cried, pointing to a small dark shape in the distance. As they watched, hearts pounding, the shape grew larger. It was a ship. "Quick!" Jack shouted. They raced to light the signal fire they had prepared, feeding it until a column of smoke rose high into the sky. The wait was agonizing. They paced the beach, afraid to take their eyes off the approaching ship for even a moment. As it drew closer, they could make out figures on the deck, and soon they heard the most beautiful sound, a horn blaring across the water. "They've seen us," Olivia cried, tears of joy streaming down her face. She turned to Jack, throwing her arms around him in an exuberant embrace. Jack held her tight, his own eyes glistening with emotion. "We did it," he murmured into her hair. "We're going home." As they watched a small boat being lowered from the ship, reality began to set in. They were about to rejoin the world they'd left behind 4 months ago. Olivia felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Jack," she said, her voice small, "what happens now?" Jack took her hand, squeezing it reassuringly. "Now we start our next adventure," he said with a smile. "Together." The rescue team reached the shore, and suddenly Jack and Olivia were surrounded by people, wrapped in blankets, and peppered with questions. It was overwhelming after so much time alone, but they clung to each other, drawing strength from their connection. As they were ushered onto the rescue boat, Olivia took one last look at the island that had been their home. Despite the hardships they'd faced, she felt a surprising pang of nostalgia. This place had changed them, had brought them together in a way that might never have happened in their normal lives. "Thank you," she whispered to the island before turning to face her future with Jack. The journey back to civilization was a whirlwind. There were medical checkups, debriefings with maritime authorities, and a flurry of media attention that neither Jack nor Olivia had anticipated. Their story of survival and love had captured the public's imagination, and they found themselves fielding interview requests from major news outlets. Through it all, they stayed by each other's side, their bond only growing stronger as they navigated this new challenge together. They decided to tell their story on their own terms, giving a single, exclusive interview to a respected journalist who treated their experience with sensitivity and respect. As the media frenzy began to die down, Jack and Olivia finally had a moment to catch their breath and consider their future. They were having dinner at a quiet restaurant, still marveling at the luxury of prepared food and comfortable seating. "So," Jack said, reaching across the table to take Olivia's hand, "what's next for us?" Olivia smiled, feeling a flutter of excitement. "Well, I've been thinking about that children's book we started on the island. I'd really like to finish it." Jack's face lit up. "I was hoping you'd say that. I've had some more ideas for the story, if you're interested." "Of course I am," Olivia said warmly. "But what about you? Are you going back to the cruise line?" Jack shook his head. "I don't think so. This experience, it's changed me. I want to do something more meaningful with my life." Olivia nodded, understanding completely. "What did you have in mind?" "I've been talking to some of the rescue coordinators," Jack explained. "They said with my experience in hospitality and now survival, I might be a good fit for their team. I'm thinking of training to become a search and rescue specialist." "Jack, that's wonderful," Olivia exclaimed. "You'd be amazing at that." He grinned, looking both excited and a little nervous. "You think so?" "I know so," Olivia said firmly. "You kept us alive on that island. You never gave up hope. You have a gift for staying calm in a crisis and helping others do the same. It's perfect for you." Jack's expression softened and he brought Olivia's hand to his lips, kissing it gently. "I couldn't have survived without you, you know. Your strength, your creativity, your ability to find beauty even in our darkest moments, you inspired me every day." Olivia felt tears welling up in her eyes. "We inspired each other," she said softly, "and we'll keep doing that, whatever comes next." As they continued their meal, they talked more about their plans. Olivia would start working on illustrations for their book, while Jack began his training. They decided to find a place together, a home where they could build their new life. Weeks turned into months, and Jack and Olivia settled into a rhythm. Their days were busy, Jack with his intensive rescue training, Olivia with her illustration work and writing, but they always made time for each other. Every evening they would share their experiences, offer encouragement, and work on their book together. The story of the two castaways who found love on a desert island began to take shape, filled with the real emotions and experiences they had shared. Olivia's illustrations captured the beauty of their island home, as well as the challenges they had faced. One sunny afternoon, almost a year after their rescue, Jack and Olivia sat in their small home office, putting the finishing touches on their book. Olivia added the last splash of color to the final illustration, while Jack read through the text one last time. "I think," Olivia said, leaning back to survey her work, "I think it's done." Jack looked up from the manuscript, a broad smile spreading across his face. "Yeah?" he asked, coming around to look at the illustration over her shoulder. "Let me see." The page showed their characters standing on the beach, watching a rescue ship approach. But unlike the fear and desperation of their real experience, the illustrated couple looked peaceful, even a little wistful. They stood hand in hand, facing their future together with hope and love. "It's perfect," Jack said, pressing a kiss to the top of Olivia's head. "Just like us." Olivia laughed, turning in her chair to face him. "We're far from perfect, Jack Holloway. Maybe," he conceded with a grin, "but we're perfect for each other. And that's what matters." As Jack pulled her to her feet and into his arms, Olivia marveled at how far they had come. From strangers on a doomed cruise ship to partners in every sense of the word, their journey had been extraordinary. "I love you," she murmured against his chest. "I love you too," Jack replied, his voice warm and sure. "Always." They stood there for a long moment, holding each other close, their completed book a testament to their shared experience and enduring love. Whatever challenges life might bring, they knew they could face them together, just as they had on their island. As the afternoon sun streamed through the window, painting their little office in a warm, golden light, Jack and Olivia looked towards their future with hope and excitement. Their island adventure had ended, but their greatest journey, the one they would take together for the rest of their lives, was just beginning.